What's up everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today is all about this knife, and no, it is not a Fujiwara Denka. In fact, if you want to see what it is, I'm going to show you a quick segment of me unboxing the knife for the first time, and I'll let you know what it is. But before we get to that segment, if you guys enjoy what you see, remember to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel because it really helps us out. Now without further ado, let's go see me unboxing the knife. Wow, that has heft. What you're looking at is a 240mm Gyuto Shirogami 1 Kurouchi finish collaboration knife between Teruyasu Fujiwara and Sugi Cutlery with a custom handle. Now, how many of you thought that this was a Fujiwara Denka? And that's because in the Fujiwara line, the Denka is the only one with a Kurouchi finish. But this one's a little bit different, so let's get to the bottom of it. This knife is a Fujiwara collaboration between Fujiwara-san and Sugi Cutlery. Joe Marone, aka Joe Bone, as you know him, who runs Sugi Cutlery. So what's important to know about this knife? First of all, this knife was made in very limited quantities. This particular one in my hand is one of 42 knives made under this collaboration, Fuji times Sugi. But this 240mm Gyuto is even more rare that it's one of 12 240mm Gyutos made with the Fuji times Sugi brand. So why is this knife unique, and why do I want to talk about it today? Well, with only 42 of these knives running around in the world, I thought it was important to learn more about why did this collaboration come to be. Now, it's probably no surprise to you that just about anyone can probably send an email to Fujiwara-san, the staff that work at the shop, and ask for a custom request on a knife. But this isn't just a custom request. This isn't a tweakage in the length of a knife that you want. This is a Shirogami 1 core steel knife with a Kurouchi finish. Something you've never seen before until you've seen it either here in my hand or on the internet. And so the reason this collaboration came about is because Fujiwara-san is a big fan of Joe Bone's handles. When Joe Marone sent an email to the Fujiwara-san shop and said he wanted to work on a collaboration project, apparently Fujiwara-san said, you know, I really like the work that Joe Marone does. He makes great handles. This is a collaboration that I would be happy to indulge in. Now, most people do know that Fujiwara knives sometimes suffer from a bit of fit and finish. So one of the main goals that Joe had in mind was, if there's a knife that I can make with the Fujiwara-san logo, and with the help of everyone who works at the shop, I want it to be a knife that maybe doesn't suffer from that fit and finish that some knife enthusiasts don't enjoy. And so that was one of the first things that Joe really wanted to see as part of this project. Now, though this is a Fujiwara-san times Sugi Cutlery collaboration knife project, what you should know is the shop, Fujiwara-san shop, felt very comfortable leading Joe to make a lot of these decisions because they knew that in the end, as someone that they have a lot of trust and confidence in, they were going to end up with an outstanding project. And so to make sure that those low spots, which are typically an issue with some Fujiwara-san knives, are not a problem, Joe sent this knife and the 41 others to Andrew from 40 Knives in New Mexico, who hand finished and polished them on stones to remove any of the low spots. Again, this is a Shirogami 1 core with a Kurouchi finish, just something Joe thought would be cool. This particular one, again, is 240mm. The handle is going to be figured narra and marbled buffalo horn. We got some copper spacers, and I'm not too sure what the spacer between the copper spacers is, but I believe it's probably some type of rock. Now let's talk about some of the specs of this knife, and then I also want to compare to my Fujiwara 210mm Denka so that you can have some numbers for comparison. The HRC of this knife is 64 to 65. This knife in particular, in my hands, has a spine width at heel of 2.1 to 2.2 millimeters. Now compared to my Fujiwara Denka, which is a 210, that one is 4 millimeters. So you can see how this is pretty much half the width of my Fujiwara Denka, which is shorter in length, but yet much thicker at the spine at heel. The height at heel of this Sugi knife is 55 millimeters, whereas my Fujiwara Denka at heel is 50 millimeters, so this one has a deeper belly. In terms of weight, this knife weighs in at 219.6 grams. If we compare that to my Fujiwara Denka 210, that one weighs 164.3 grams. Now, of course, when these knives were up for sale, what Joe did, which I thought was really cool, is he was selling the knife blade itself and saying whatever handle you kind of want to come up with, go ahead and choose a handle that will help you customize this knife the way you see fit. Something else you may not have noticed about this knife, which is really cool, is that the kanji is not Fujiwara-san's logo. It is this Sugi kanji. Now, that's important because it A, demonstrates that Fujiwara-san felt comfortable enough to make a knife for Jobone and say, instead of putting the stamp of my own shop, we're going to put in a kanji that represents yours. Now, Sugi, a little bit of history behind Sugi, not only the kanji that's on this knife, but the idea of what is Sugi. So Jobone, in his 20s and 30s, worked at a bonsai nursery, and he ended up liking the Sugi cedar. He liked this tree for its properties, which he thought were also going to be fantastic properties and qualities for a good kitchen knife. Those qualities which he thought would be important to a good knife would be the fact that the Sugi cedar was durable, tall and straight, strong but flexible, and very mystical. So at the end of the day, we have a beautiful collaboration knife in my hands. But how does it pair up against some of the other knives, right? Now, in terms of price, I would say that this knife was sold closer to the Denka price than the Maboroshi. Now, why is that important? Well, because what you do know is that the Fujiwara Maboroshi line has the Shirogami 1 steel, Tsuchime finish, so exactly like this knife so far, but not Kurouchi finish, just Tsuchime pattern. The Denka, however, is Aogomi Super with the Kurouchi finish and also the Tsuchime pattern. So this one kind of sits in between the two in that it borrows steel from the Maboroshi line, but it borrows the finish from the Denka line, the Kurouchi. I was fortunate enough to have the owner of this knife, who's Michael Lee, I'll put a tag for his profile here on Facebook, send me this knife so I can review it, talk about it, since this is, again, only one 42 knives, and use it as well. Now, since I wasn't sure what Michael Lee did to his knife prior to sending it to me, I wanted to make sure that it had a really nice edge, and so I sharpened it on my Shapton Glass 1000, my Shapton Glass 6000, finished it on the Japanese natural stone, and then used, of course, a compound and leather strop, kind of just to remove the burr, and treated it kind of like my Fujiwara Maboroshi, which takes an excellent edge from that treatment of stones. Now, in terms of the balance point on this knife, I'd say it's just a little bit forward to the pinch grip. Let's see if I can get it. Right about here. So if you have larger hands, that's not a problem. Here's a comparison of the spines from the Fujiwara Denka, as well as this Fuji x Sugi knife. Here's a profile of both knives, just so you can have some comparison. It's very comfortable to hold despite its length. I really like the beefiness of the blade, but yet it's so much thinner than my Denka. Again, half the width at spine. The belly height is fantastic. The geometry of the blade means that I can rock cut no problem. So up on screen, what you'll see now is you'll see me using this knife, and I want to talk about this knife now, not just about the collaboration, about how it came to be, but about kind of my initial thoughts after using it for a week. And to do that, let me be franky with you. That's a saying that my buddy Breg told me to use. So let me be franky with you. What do I think? Well, I do know that Shirogami 1 is one of my favorite steels as well, carbon steels, because it has excellent bite. This knife, I somehow don't find to have the same bite as my other Shirogami 1 knives, but it has phenomenal performance. In terms of fit and finish, honestly, I can really tell that Andrew did a great job, because one of the first things I noticed when I received it is I took a look at the bevels and I realized how much flatter of a profile it was compared to my Denka. It just appears like there is no high or low spots. So Andrew at 40 Knives did a fantastic job. The other thing I noticed was the beautiful custom handle. Now, I will admit that either it's because it was sent to me in Edmonton where it's dry and cold, but the copper spacers do kind of stick out a little bit. Not that it bugs me a lot. Steel is going to be a material that when used in handles will not really expand or constrict itself depending on the temperature. So that could just be kind of an issue with the weather in Edmonton. Fit and finish again on the bevel is fantastic. But where I was left a little bit disappointed is that for the price point of this knife being closer to a Denka, I will say that as fun of a knife as it has been to use for the past week, probably one of my biggest disappointments in receiving it was noticing that the finish on the spine and choil was not polished. It really looks like my Denka, and this is one of the measures that, in terms of the Japanese kitchen knife enthusiasts, typically that's where people have issues, right? It's the fit and finish of a Denka because they're spending so much money, and then they take a look at the spine and choil and they ask themselves, why wasn't this polished so that it's more comfortable to hold? You'll also notice on this knife that there is no finger notch at the choil, and the reason for this is quite simple. Because it bears the Sugi kanji and not the Fujiwara kanji, a finger notch on any Teruyasu Fujiwara knife is reserved for a Teruyasu Fujiwara knife. And so this knife does not have the finger notch for exactly that reason. Now, I did enjoy using it over the week. Again, it doesn't tend to have the bite of other Shirogami 1 knives that I've used, but because of the new edge that I put on it, it performed very, very well. I loved the added length. I loved the height at the belly. And so what you should know about this knife is, if after all this discourse, you're thinking, Frankie, this is such a sexy knife, how do I get my hands on it? Well, turns out Michael Lee is selling his knife. This exact one. So if you want this 240mm Gyuto Fuji x Sugi collaboration knife with the Shirogami 1 core steel, Kurouchi finish, Tsuchime pattern with the custom handle, I'll put a link in the description of this video below. Get in touch with Michael. I'm sure he would be happy to sell to you. That's it. Hope you guys liked hearing about this Fuji x Sugi knife. I'm sure you won't see many of these out there. Maybe there's new projects in the works. I have no idea. But for now, I have really enjoyed having my hands on this excellent, unique, great fit and finish knife other than the spine and choil. And that's exactly why I have an issue with this, because though an improvement to fit and finish, like having no low spots, is important, it's really only important and significant when you're flattening your knife or sharpening, whereas having a polished spine and choil, that's for everyday use. Another fun fact about the fit and finish, when I was taking a look at the choil shot, because everyone loves that good old choil shot, you can tell that it is very flat, it is very symmetrical, even compared to my Denka. So there, again, Joe Bone did an excellent job. I really think that his vision came through in this knife. It's one of a kind, it's beautiful, it's definitely Fujiwara craftsmanship, but with a little bit extra, with those really flat bevels, no low spots, custom handles. What more can you want? Another little fun fact about this knife is, if I gave this to you and you thought that this was a Fujiwara Denka, by using it, you would notice immediately, if you've had experience with that this is Shirogami. Why? Because the patina is like my other patinas from my other Shirogami 1 knives, tends to patina a little bit more yellow. Whereas with my Ogomi Super knives, I tend to get a richer, darker hues of blacks and blues. This one definitely patinaed yellow over the past week. So there's a little fun fact for those thinking that this is a Denka. It is a Shirogami 1 core steel. Well, guys, thanks for watching. I really hope you enjoyed learning about this Fuji x Sugi Cutlery collaboration knife. Beautiful 240mm Gyuto, Shirogami 1 core steel, Kurouchi finish, Tsuchime pattern. The custom handle is really one of a kind. It's absolutely fantastic. I want to thank Michael Lee one last time for sending me this knife. It's been a true honor to be able to use it, review it, test it against some of the veg in my fridge. Again, I'm super happy too that I got to learn a bit more about Joe Bone and Sugi Cutlery because of this knife. Can't wait to see if he has anything else up and coming. But until then, see you next time.